A $50 million weekend should have set off a celebration that echoed across every corner of women's basketball. Headlines, posts, public praise from the very league that spent years asking for more attention, more money, more respect. Instead, what followed was something far louder than applause. Silence. No congratulations, no public acknowledgement, not even the kind of half-hearted support that usually shows up when success becomes impossible to ignore. Just absence. And that absence raised more questions than any statement ever could. While Caitlin Clark was stacking endorsement deals that reportedly eclipsed what most players earn across entire careers, the people who should have been first in line to celebrate stayed quiet. Not accidentally, not because they missed it. Quiet in a way that felt measured, deliberate, almost strategic. In today's sports world, silence isn't neutral. It's a message, and this one landed hard. What made it even stranger was who did speak up. Golf embraced her instantly. Media outside basketball couldn't stop talking about it. Elite athletes from completely different sports weighed in, openly impressed, genuinely excited by what they just witnessed. The moment crossed boundaries most players never touch. Yet the league, connected to her name, her draft, her jersey sales, and her rating spike, acted like the weekend never happened. And that's where the story really begins. Because this wasn't just about a celebrity showing up at a golf event. It wasn't about a lucky weekend or viral clips. It was about what happens when undeniable star power collides with an organization that doesn't quite know how to react when one person becomes bigger than the system around them. When success doesn't fit neatly into the narrative that's already been written. If you felt that disconnect, if you noticed how fast the world reacted and how slowly the silence spread, trust that instinct. What unfolded wasn't random, and it definitely wasn't harmless. Because sometimes, the loudest statement an organization can make is choosing not to speak at all. And once you see why, it's impossible to unsee what comes next. The weekend in question wasn't supposed to matter this much. The RSM Classic Pro-Am has always existed in a comfortable lane. Low pressure, light headlines, a blend of professionals and familiar faces meant to entertain without disrupting the sports calendar. These events rarely spill outside golf media, and when they do, it's usually for polite highlights, not cultural impact. Nothing about it suggested a moment that would reset expectations across women's sports. Then one name appeared on the participant list, Caitlin Clark. Almost immediately, the math changed. Tickets that had been sitting untouched didn't just sell, they vanished. Demand spiked so fast, organizers barely had time to react. And here's the part that caught everyone off guard. People weren't rushing in to see seasoned golfers or legendary champions. They were showing up to watch a basketball player swing a club. That detail matters, because it wasn't about golf skill on paper. It was about curiosity, gravity, and presence. People wanted to see her. What happens when someone who already bends one sports economy steps into another arena entirely? That question alone was enough to flip a quiet exhibition into must-watch territory. By the time event day arrived, the crowd told the story without needing numbers. Basketball jerseys outnumbered polo shirts. Fever gear was everywhere. The atmosphere felt less like a country club weekend and more like game night. Organizers later admitted they'd never seen anything like it. The energy was different, louder, younger, more diverse. Fans who had never followed professional golf were lining the ropes, phones out, waiting for one moment. The event didn't slowly build attention over days. It detonated before the first swing. And that's what made it impossible to dismiss as coincidence. Because when a single appearance can transform attendance, merchandise sales, and media coverage overnight, it stops being about sport and starts being about influence. One weekend didn't just exceed expectations, it rewrote the rule book for what crossover appeal actually looks like. And once that door opened, there was no putting the moment back in its box. By the time she reached the first tee, the mood had shifted from curiosity to anticipation. Thousands of people weren't chatting or moving around like they normally would at a casual pro-am. They were still, quiet in that rare way that only happens when a crowd senses something meaningful is about to unfold. This wasn't golf etiquette silence, it was collective focus, as if everyone understood they were about to witness a moment that wouldn't repeat itself. Caitlin Clark stepped into the tee box without theatrics. No show, no nerves on display. She looked comfortable, almost amused, like this was just another routine challenge instead of a course packed with cameras, pros, and expectations. That call mattered, because pressure has a way of exposing people, especially when they're outside their own sport. And yet, nothing about her body language suggested doubt. Then the swing happened. Clean, loud, that sharp crack of contact that instantly tells everyone watching that the ball was struck exactly the way it's supposed to be. The shot didn't drift or wobble. It didn't flirt with trouble. It sailed straight down the fairway, landing where experienced players aim on purpose. For a split second, nobody reacted, and then the entire crowd erupted at once. Even the professionals took notice. Tiger Woods, someone who has seen every version of pressure imaginable, was visibly impressed. Reports from the course said he laughed, shook his head, and commented that it was one of the best first swings he'd ever seen from a non-professional. That isn't casual praise. Coming from someone who rarely hands out compliments, it landed like a stamp of legitimacy. The moment spread instantly. Cameras caught it, phones captured it, social feeds lit up in real time. What should have been a forgettable opening shot became the clip everyone shared, dissected, and replayed. Not because she was perfect, because she looked fearless. And when fearlessness shows up in a place it doesn't belong, people notice. That single swing flipped the narrative. This stopped being about a novelty appearance and became something else entirely. Because now the question wasn't whether she belonged on that course, it was how far this moment was about to travel once the rest of the world caught up to what the crowd had just seen. The reaction didn't build slowly, it exploded. Before the crowd had fully settled back in, the clip was already moving across platforms at breakneck speed. Phones buzzed, timelines refreshed. The moment escaped the golf course and landed straight into the global sports conversation. What made it different wasn't just the shot itself, but who was reacting to it almost instantly. Stephen Curry was one of the first to jump in, joking online that she might actually be better at golf than he is. It sounded lighthearted, but the effect was anything but small. That single comment sent her name trending worldwide, pulling in fans who hadn't watched a second of the Pro-Am. When one superstar validates another, the internet listens. And it kept listening as more reactions poured in. Sports media followed fast. ESPN started running comparisons that went well beyond novelty, placing her alongside the most naturally gifted crossover athletes in modern history. Golf publications picked it up next, framing the moment not as entertainment, but as disruption. The tone shifted from surprise to recognition. Something unusual had happened, and nobody wanted to be the outlet that ignored it. What stood out most was how effortless the momentum felt. There was no coordinated rollout, no carefully timed announcement, no manufactured controversy, just a raw moment that resonated across sports because it felt authentic. She didn't chase attention, attention chased her. And that distinction matters in an era where audiences can smell forced hype instantly. As the clips kept circulating, the narrative began to harden. This wasn't about curiosity anymore, it was about credibility. Every repost, every reaction from an established name reinforced the same idea. This wasn't an accident, and it wasn't temporary. The gravity was real. And once momentum like that takes hold online, it doesn't slow down on its own. Because visibility is one thing, but when visibility turns into validation from the biggest names in sports, it becomes leverage. And that's when the conversation quietly shifts from viral moment to financial consequence. What happened next is where the story stopped being about reactions and started being about power. Within days of the Pro-Am wrapping up, reports began circulating about just how valuable that single weekend had been. Not hype, not clicks, actual deals. According to multiple sports business reports, Caitlin Clark finalized several major endorsement agreements almost immediately after the event. Golf apparel, luxury watches, beverage branding, even discussions around long-form digital content tied to her training and crossover appeal. Different industries, same conclusion.
The combined value of those reported deals landed at a staggering figure, $50 million. It's important to be clear here. These numbers are based on reporting and industry estimates, not a single public contract announcement, but the consistency across sources told the same story. Brands didn't hesitate. They didn't wait and see. They moved fast because moments like this don't stay available for long. That number alone forced uncomfortable comparisons, not opinions, not commentary, just arithmetic. Most WNBA players will not come close to that figure over the course of an entire career. That's not a knock. It's a reflection of how rare true market-moving influence actually is. One weekend of exhibition golf created more personal brand value than decades of professional play do for most athletes. That reality is harsh, but it's also how modern sports economics work.
Business analysts quickly labeled it the Clark effect, a term meant to describe what happens when her presence alone alters demand curves. We'd already seen it in basketball. Ticket prices jumping overnight, television ratings multiplying, merchandise sales breaking records. What this weekend proved is that the phenomenon isn't tied to the hardwood, it's tied to her. Change the setting, and the result is the same. Even the event organizers acknowledged the difference. They reportedly confirmed that her appearance generated more revenue than several previous Pro-Am events combined. Merch featuring her name outsold traditional tournament gear. Many buyers weren't lifelong golf fans. They were newcomers pulled in by the chance to witness someone who feels larger than any single sport. And that's the uncomfortable shift happening beneath the surface. When one athlete can walk into a different league's ecosystem and instantly outperform long-established revenue patterns, it reframes every conversation about leverage. Visibility turns into bargaining power, attention turns into income, and suddenly this stops being about golf entirely. Because once money follows you across boundaries like this, it raises a question no league can ignore for long. If the value travels with the player, who really needs who? What happened after the numbers surfaced revealed a split that was impossible to ignore. Two major women's sports leagues were watching the same moment unfold, yet they responded in completely different ways. Not because they saw different facts, but because they operated with entirely different mindsets about what star power actually means. The LPGA moved first, and they moved decisively. Their official channels highlighted her appearance, amplified the buzz, and leaned into the attention without hesitation. Players within the tour welcomed her publicly, some praising her poise, others celebrating the new eyes she brought to the sport. There was no insecurity in the response, no concern about hierarchy, just a clear understanding that attention is an asset, not a threat. If one person brings millions of new viewers into your ecosystem, you make room, you don't shrink from it. Behind the scenes, that attitude paid off immediately. Women's golf saw a surge in interest from demographics they've struggled to reach for years. Younger fans, casual sports viewers, people who normally wouldn't know a Pro-Am from a major tournament. The LPGA didn't try to control the narrative, they let it grow, trusting that exposure lifts everyone involved. The response from the WNBA stood in sharp contrast. As the headlines spread and the endorsements stacked up, official acknowledgement remained minimal. There were no celebratory posts matching the scale of the moment, no enthusiastic amplification of their own stars' crossover success. For a league that has benefited enormously from her arrival in ratings, attendance, and cultural relevance, the quiet felt intentional. To many observers, it looked less like restraint and more like discomfort, as if celebrating too loudly might set a precedent, as if acknowledging one player's magnitude could undermine the idea that everything must be evenly distributed. But modern sports don't work that way. Attention doesn't spread itself evenly out of fairness. It concentrates around moments, personalities, and stories people care about. That difference in reaction revealed a deeper philosophy divide. One league saw an opportunity to expand its audience and embraced it fully. The other appeared wary of elevating an individual beyond the collective brand, and that hesitation didn't go unnoticed.
Because when one organization understands how to ride momentum and another tries to manage it, fans don't need press releases to read between the lines. They can feel which league is confident in its product and which one is still negotiating its relationship with greatness. It didn't take long for fans to start connecting dots on their own. As the contrast between reactions became clearer, online conversations shifted from celebration to interpretation. And this is where it's important to draw a line between confirmed facts and perception, because what followed wasn't an official statement from any league or player. It was a growing consensus among viewers watching everything unfold in real time and asking the same question: why does this feel so uncomfortable for one side? Across social platforms, many fans began framing the silence as something deeper than oversight. Some suggested the league was trying to avoid centering the narrative around one individual, a philosophy that's been hinted at before. Others speculated that elevating one superstar so visibly could expose long-standing disparities in marketability and attention that no organization likes to confront publicly. These weren't accusations, they were interpretations, fueled by patterns people believed they'd already seen. A recurring theme kept surfacing in comment sections and long-form posts. Fans felt there was a disconnect between the push for equality in coverage and the reality of how audiences actually behave. Viewers don't distribute attention evenly. They follow stars, they chase moments, they engage where emotion pulls them. And when someone consistently draws that energy, pretending it doesn't exist only magnifies the tension. Some fans went further, suggesting that resentment, not strategy, played a role. The idea wasn't that anyone disliked her personally, but that her scale of impact forced uncomfortable comparisons. Years of advocacy for better pay and exposure suddenly collided with an athlete who was actually generating those things. To some observers, that contradiction felt hard to reconcile, especially when it challenged narratives built around collective struggle rather than individual magnetism.
None of this has been confirmed, and it's crucial to say that clearly. There's no leaked memo, no official explanation, just patterns, timing, and silence that allowed speculation to breathe. And once speculation gains oxygen online, it grows fast, especially when fans believe they're watching history repeat itself. What made these conversations linger was how familiar they sounded. Sports fans have seen this dynamic before, when leagues wrestle with stars who grow faster than the system around them. The worry isn't that one player shines too bright, it's what happens when the league doesn't know how to stand in that light. And as these discussions spread, one realization started to solidify in the minds of many viewers. Whether intentional or not, the response to that weekend revealed more than any press release ever could. And once fans sense that, they don't forget it. As the dust settled, one reality became impossible to avoid. The balance of leverage had shifted, and not quietly. This weekend didn't just add another highlight to Caitlin Clark's resume, it showed something far more disruptive. Her value isn't anchored to any single league, it travels with her. In modern sports, that kind of portability is everything. When an athlete can move between spaces and generate the same gravity, the traditional power structure starts to wobble. Leagues usually hold the leverage because they control the platform, but when the audience follows the individual instead, the platform becomes optional. That's not theory anymore. The golf weekend turned it into a case study. What made this moment especially jarring was how effortlessly it happened. There was no long build-up, no years of crossover branding. She walked into a different sport, participated at a casual level, and still managed to outperform established revenue models. That alone rewrites how negotiations are viewed, not just for her, but for every future star watching closely. Fans began pointing out what league leadership couldn't ignore. If one player can generate sellouts, rating spikes, and sponsorship waves without relying on basketball at all, then participation becomes a choice, not a necessity. That doesn't mean she's leaving anything behind. It means her options are expanding, and options create leverage, whether they're used or not. This is the part that reportedly unsettles organizations most.
Power doesn't announce itself. It shows up in decisions not yet made. When someone can say, maybe, instead of, I need this, the relationship changes, the negotiation table tilts, and suddenly, the idea of controlling the narrative feels outdated. It also reframes every previous attempt to minimize individual star impact. The logic collapses when the same result keeps happening in different environments. At that point, it's no longer about promotion strategy. It's about accepting that some athletes don't fit inside predefined boxes, no matter how carefully those boxes are designed. That's why this weekend mattered more than it looked. It wasn't loud, it wasn't confrontational, but it made something clear that can't be walked back. The leverage has moved, and once that happens, everyone involved has to rethink what comes next, whether they're ready or not. When everything is stripped down to its core, this was never really about golf. It was about response, about recognition, about how systems react when someone grows faster than their comfort zone allows. One organization saw an opportunity and leaned in. Another hesitated. And in that hesitation, a message surfaced that no amount of future praise can fully erase. Caitlin Clark didn't demand attention. She didn't campaign for validation. She showed up, performed, and let the results speak in a language leagues understand better than words. Fans followed, brands followed, other sports followed, and in doing so, they revealed a simple truth that often makes institutions uneasy. Greatness doesn't need permission, it creates its own momentum. The silence that surrounded this moment didn't diminish it. If anything, it sharpened the contrast, because while some tried to manage the optics, the world outside those walls responded instinctively. They recognized confidence, they recognized skill, they recognized someone who doesn't have to ask where the ceiling is because she's already operating above it. What makes this moment linger is what it implies going forward. Once an athlete proves their value isn't confined to one arena, the relationship changes permanently. Loyalty becomes mutual, not assumed. Participation becomes a choice, not an obligation. And that kind of independence is the one thing no league can manufacture after the fact. This wasn't a rebellion. It wasn't a statement issued at a podium. It was quieter than that. A reminder that markets respond to authenticity, fans respond to excellence, and power follows whoever can consistently deliver both. The star wasn't contained, she simply expanded beyond the boundaries placed around her. And now the lesson is out there in plain sight. Organizations can either learn how to grow alongside that kind of force, or keep studying the silence, wondering when control quietly slipped through their fingers.